Ngā mihi and welcome to Sector Report. In this show, we take a look at a training scheme which has been around for 50-odd years. The program's known as Agriventure and allows young people from overseas the chance to work on New Zealand farms for around 6 months through our spring and summer. It's in full swing right now, and most of the 100 or so trainees will be going home next month, enriched with newfound knowledge of New Zealand farming techniques, which most put to good use back in their home countries. We travelled to Northland to visit 2 host farms and meet some hard-working trainees. And we'll speak with the woman who runs Agriventure, Robin Barron. But first, let's meet young Katrina from Denmark. 20-year-old Katrina Holmenlund hails from Denmark and has spent much of her time working on Dennis Anderson's Northland property at Mangatawhiri. Dennis farms 370 dairy cows on around 150 hectares and has been part of the Agriventure scheme for overseas trainees for more than 30 years. Back in Denmark, Katrina is no farm girl but hails from a provincial city instead. Despite having no farming background, she's loving the outdoors here. So why did Katrina come to the other end of the world for 6 months on farms?
I thought that I would like to be a veterinarian.
Veterinarian?
Exactly. So you have to have really high grades to get into study in Denmark. And I wasn't sure that I would get high enough grades. But you can also go into study by having a work experience. So I thought that by going to New Zealand to work with cows, I could get that.
And you still want to be a veterinarian?
Nah, I'm not too sure. Not anymore.
No, it won't be farming in the Danish countryside for Katrina on her return. Instead, she plans to do a phys ed course and become a personal trainer. So how did she find out about the Agriventure scheme?
One of my friends, he has just been in Canada on this program, so he told me about it, and I thought that that was exactly what I was looking for. Right. I wanted to go to another country, plus have some work, so it would be perfect. So you get your accommodation and meals provided here. Do you actually get paid money? Do you get wages? Oh yeah, of course I do. I pay board, but beside that I also just get my normal wages. Dennis is at the other end of the bargain as host, so why does he do it?
To a certain extent it was self-seeking. We saw it as a great opportunity to have young people from overseas live with us and be part of our family, and it was great for the kids at that age to be mixing with people who have different nationalities, and at the same time we were getting lovely people from other countries to help on our farm and be part of our team.
So what parts of the world do these trainees tend to come from?
Oh, we've had a wide range. We've had a number of Canadians, British, Swiss, Swedish, Germans, Dutch.
Mainly European or North American?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you find that sometimes these trainees can be a bit more of a hindrance than a help because you're having to spend time, well, training them?
No, they've always been a genuine help with a real interest and a keenness to be part of the industry that they've chosen to be involved in for a short period of time. And we've obviously had training to do in many cases. But having said that, most of the trainees have had some sort of agriculture background. More commonly recently we've seemed to have some coming through that have had no background in agriculture at all but seek to go into associated industries and see it as a chance for work experience and a chance to see another country.
So a lot of them actually stay in agriculture, or at least agribusiness of some form or other?
Very much so. We've maintained contact with most of our trainees over the years, and they've gone home and gone into agriculture industries and married farmers, and so we're quite proud of the sort of relationship we've built with the farming, and they've obviously enjoyed the experience.
And what sort of success stories have you had in terms of feedback from these people once they get home?
Oh, well, it's just to watch them go from young trainees on our farm and to go home and end up farming their own farms. It's obviously been quite pleasing for us to see that follow-up going on.
It's been a busy time for Katrina working on the Anderson farm. It might be hard, but she's happy.
I have been feeding calves, I have been milking, done other duties like pulling out thistles, grabbing thistles.
That's hard work.
It is, but it's good just to go out in the sun, and I like it actually.
And of course you had the big floods up here just a few weeks ago. You must have had to do a bit of clean-up after that.
Oh yeah, I have been pulling weed off the fences. The guys have been fencing and I have just done all the pre-work.
Of course, New Zealand dairying is radically different from the much more modest scale of small European herds. But Dennis's trainees often take what they've learned here and put it into practice back home on the family farm.
The last French girl that was here, for example, she's gone back onto her parents' farm, and they were milking 45, 55 cows, I think, when she was here, but what her experience here showed her that they could milk more, and their fathers expanded the farm and they're milking 120 cows now, so they learn while they're here. And
that's pretty big by French standards, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is. It's a fair-sized farm.
That report on Katrina and her Northland farmer, tutor and host, Dennis Anderson. Back in a moment with Robin Barron of Agriventure. Well, Robin, welcome to the Sector Report here on Country 99 TV. Now, your Agriventure scheme falls under the auspices of the International Agricultural Exchange Association. Can you tell me about that organisation and how Agriventure sort of fits in with it, I guess?
Okay, yeah. IAEA, International Agricultural Exchange Association, was set up around about 40 years ago, specifically as an exchange organisation to enable young people to travel and experience work on farms around the world.
Was it a British kind of initiative?
No, it was actually Danish. It was a Danish, young Danish guy by the name of Hans Christensen set it up. I think he travelled to Canada and worked on a farm and was quite badly exploited, so that was the sort of it in a nutshell, how it all started. And in the early days, the exchanges were called IAEA, agricultural exchanges, and in the 90s I think they decided that they needed to give it a brand name, so Agriventure was the name they came up with. So Agriventure is simply the name of the program.
And is that pretty much, that Agriventure program is pretty much the main reason for the IAEA's
It's basically
existence?
the only reason for their existence, yeah.
Actually, it's interesting you talk about the founder being Hans Christensen being exploited. Was that an issue in the first decade or two of Agriventure?
Not so much, I think, because there were very strict rules in place as to how the trainees, as we call them, were to be treated. And in the early days, a lot of the trainees, if not all of the trainees, actually came through things like the Young Farmers organisations. So had quite specific expectations about what they were doing the exchanges for. And as I say, there were quite strict rules. All the host families, even now, are vetted before they're allowed to actually host someone, and are evaluated by us and by the trainees themselves. So, if they're not stepping up to the mark and they're not treating their trainees well,
but
they
that
don't
would
host
be
again.
pretty rare now, and obviously you've got some reasonably good, consistent sort of monitoring processes.
Exactly, yeah, we do. And throughout the program, while a trainee is actually on farm, on a placement, they have people that they can contact if they're having problems and if they're having issues, as does the host family. They are also able to contact people, so no problems problems shouldn't get too far out of hand, because there should be people there to sort of help sort them out.
So you've pretty well got the bases covered. Now, how many young people take part every year around the world? Around the world,
it's between 400 and 500. New Zealand is one of the most popular destination countries. I think we're second behind Australia.
Really?
So we have, each year we have probably between about 110 and 130 coming into the country at various times. The main intakes are August and October.
Right.
But they do come in at other times of the year as well.
But most of them, particularly from the Northern Hemisphere, they can escape a winter and spend the summer out here, spring and summer, I guess. Although August's not that hospitable a month.
Well, no.
Do young New Zealanders go overseas to train on farms, or is it pretty much one-way traffic into New Zealand?
No, absolutely. New Zealanders travel out as well.
Okay.
We have quite a few going out. Most, we'd like more, obviously, but in its heyday from New Zealand, when the profile of the organisation was really high, we had up to 80 New Zealanders travelling out. Yeah.
Where were they going?
Probably the most popular destination for New Zealanders is Canada,
right.
Followed closely by the UK and Europe. Sweden was always a popular destination. The Scandinavian countries, I think, mainly because English is generally not too much of a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And then fewer numbers who would go to sort of France or Germany, the Netherlands, and some, one or two actually have chosen to go to Japan in the past.
Right. Interesting. Very different. I was just wondering about where the trainees come from. It would seem really your catchment really effectively excludes Asia, South America, Africa and Australia, really. So you're left with mainly people from North America and Europe.
Yeah, we do. Australia is involved in the scheme, and we do have Australians coming, and New Zealanders do go to Australia. But I think the thing with Australia is that it's so easy for New Zealanders to go over there anyway and work that it's not one of the countries we focus on.
Yeah.
In fact, if we have people who talk to us about wanting to go there, we sort of try and say to them, well, if you're going to do something like this and use us to do it, why not
go further afield?
Go a bit further afield.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How did these young people find out about the scheme?
A lot of it's by word of mouth. A lot of them
or by word of Facebook.
Word of Facebook nowadays. Yeah. You know, a lot of them will be living in areas where there are host families that are hosting people from overseas, and so they learn about it that way. We also do, you know, some advertising and go to career expos around the country to sort of tap into the gap year market.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing
that's
as
quite
well.
a big one.
And overseas, in places like Denmark, where the organisation first started, it's actually a very well-known organisation. So, you know, we have trainees coming to New Zealand whose fathers came.
Really?
Or whose uncles came,
That's amazing.
So it's...
Well, yeah, speaking of Denmark, I mean, we've just met young Danish trainee Catherine on the program, or Katrina, who will not be going farming when she goes home. Instead, she wants to be a personal trainer. But do most of them go onto the land or into agriculture in some form or other when they get home? For instance, in our next field report, we meet an Englishman who wants to do a degree in agricultural engineering when he gets home. So do they tend to kind of stay in some form or other in agriculture?
I would say probably 75% of them do, yeah.
That's good.
Most of them are coming because they're interested in farming or farming-related businesses, and they're doing it as a way of furthering their career or just, you know, broadening their horizons. But then we also do get the people like Catherine who just want to do something completely different.
Absolutely,
before they decide what they're going to do with the rest of their life, or you know, go on to do what it is they've decided to do. So this is a great way to do it.
And I guess they take back a lot of fresh knowledge, which they can put into practice on the family farm if there is one, like the French girl that Dennis Anderson mentioned. Now, of course, the scheme requires host farmers as well as trainees. Is it hard to recruit farmers willing to employ these young people?
Yes and no. I mean, most families, most farms love the idea, but at certain points, for example, in sort of economic times that we've got at the moment, it is sometimes quite tricky.
Yeah.
And it's often quite tricky to find farms of the kind that the trainees are looking for. You know, I mean, we obviously, being New Zealand, we have a lot of dairy farms.
Yeah.
But we also have a lot of people coming in who would really love to go to a sheep farm.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very tricky to find placements for these guys that actually match what they want to do.
And I guess farmers would not be wanting to add somebody onto their payroll. I guess they would be wanting, in an ideal world, for somebody working for them to leave, and then they can simply replace that person with this trainee.
That's exactly right. And for, I mean, in a lot of cases, they only need somebody for a short period of time. So, for example, from October to April, just fits in
just
very
over
well.
That busy period, yeah, exactly. It would require a fair bit of patience from the farmer, wouldn't it? I mean, after all, he's got to spend a fair bit of his precious time teaching.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's not everyone can successfully host the trainees because, as you're right, it does take a lot of patience and an awareness that however much experience some of these trainees have, for a lot of them, English isn't their first language.
Exactly,
so they may be very experienced farmers, but trying to teach them about New Zealand terms, the way we do things, and just some of the slang, particularly farmers can use on farm, can be quite tricky.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, they tend to be mumblers and...
Yeah.
Just very briefly, Robin, do they have to go where they're put, or do they have some choice?
They do have a certain amount of choice. They specify what they'd like. They usually sort of, have a list of 5 in order of preference, dairy, sheep, whatever. And we try our best to match them up with what they want. And we try and match interests as well. So, it's a little bit like a blind dating game, really.
It sounds it, but an interesting one.
Yeah.
It does sound like an excellent scheme, and certainly what we saw of it up north in Northland was quite impressive. So thanks very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Robin Barron there, who runs the Agriventure scheme from Cambridge. Coming up, we pay a visit to another Northland farm, playing host to 2 young Englishmen. Andy Smith hard at work drenching yearling bulls at Arapuhua in Northland, a far cry from what he's used to. Andy hails from the county of Warwickshire in the very flat Midlands of England, with its holdings on a much smaller scale than here. So what brought him all the way to New Zealand at the bottom of the world?
I wanted a gap year and something to do rather than education, and I thought to myself, what do I like doing? And because I worked on a dairy farm, I was milking cows, and I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to pursue that and learn more about in that field. So then I asked my boss back home where I should come, and he said New Zealand is the obvious place. So I said, okay, then I'll do it. So then I looked on the internet and found Agriventure, and then signed up, and here I am.
And here you are, yeah. So have you enjoyed your time here?
Oh, it's been fabulous, yeah. I'm quite lucky really, because I worked on the dairy farm for 3 months, and then I've changed to a beef farm, which I've never done in my life, so a completely new experience. So to me, it's amazing, yeah.
So what sort of work have you been doing here on this property?
Well, recently we've been spraying gorse, because in the calendar year it's time to spray gorse, so February and March. And then the other 2 weeks ago we've been doing fencing. So me and Jimmy, the other worker, we've been on our own in the paddock with the post bumper and that. So
pretty hard work.
Yeah, long days, very hard work. Yeah, like at least 10-hour days every day. So yeah, and in this heat as well, it makes it even harder.
Handling fairly stroppy animals like these is a far cry from what Andy's used to, but it's just one of many new skills he's got under his belt.
I feel I've learnt loads. I'm ready to go back and tell people about my adventure and teach people stuff that I've learnt. And
yeah, what sort of stuff, particularly on the dairy property, will you be able to pass on?
About the rotary palets, that's the biggest thing. That was my main aim for coming out here, just to work with one, because they're quite special. So yeah, just to tell people back home about it. And
not many of them in England, rotary?
No,
trees?
not at all. No, not really. No.
Is that because the herd sizes aren't big enough?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, mainly smaller. So because I come from a 200 herd farm, and here I've been working on a 700 and an 800, so it's a bit different. This farming operation is a big one by any standards. Spread over 5 farms with 6,500 cattle, a mixture of beef and dairy. The owners also invested in 2 properties with 2,500 cows in Victoria. That owner and tutor for Andy and another young Englishman is David Webster, a stalwart of the Agriventure scheme for some 30 years. So why has he stayed with the training scheme?
Meet the people from overseas, learn about their lifestyle in their home country, and hopefully go and meet them one day, which we've just done.
You've been back to Europe and been able to catch up with some of the trainees that have been here on your properties.
Yes, we've just had a 5-week holiday in Europe and Norway, and met up with 7 different trainees.
Oh, and how are they all doing?
Oh, very well, and it's good to meet them over. Some have been 15 years since we met them last, and it was very good meeting them again.
And they've been able to make a success of things with what they'd learned here?
Yes, and it's very much so. And and they've taken it home, and their parents have really enjoyed learning what they've learnt over here in New Zealand.
I think there was one Norwegian guy in particular who'd picked up a lot.
Yes, and he would love to come back to New Zealand, but he's now married with 3 children, so hence he can't really move back here to New Zealand.
Now, the young people you take on, are many of them from farming backgrounds who already have a bit of knowledge of what's involved?
Probably about 80% of them would be from off a farm or parents have been farming sometime. And that was a whole criteria 10 years ago, that they had to be off a farm.
But nowadays they can come from the cities?
Yes, yes.
And do you find that they're pretty useful people to have around the farm?
The ones who want to learn and take the knowledge back to their farm are very, very keen and probably work harder than they should. Yeah. But they want to learn, so they do that.
Do you ever have any duds?
We've had 1 or 2 which we'd like to be a bit better than they are, but they're a lot of fun, and especially one in particular, a lot of fun, and so we really enjoyed having her.
Where was she from?
Germany.
Another trainee working for David is 21-year-old Tom Ware from Cornwall. So what brought him all the way out here to learn about our farming?
I come out here for 8 months and see what it's all about out here like.
And are you from a farming background?
Wow, no I'm not, but I got into farming through my mates and I started enjoying it like, so I thought I'd carry on with it.
Yeah. So will you be all the time on the one property?
No, so we moved about a fair bit, like I might go down to the other farm and I might come back here. Just depends what jobs he's doing on each other's farms like.
What sort of work have you been doing on these farms while you've been here in New Zealand?
Everything,
yeah.
Everything. I've been milking, I've been shifting cows, I've been moving the irrigator, seeding, just tractor
so
work.
A bit of everything,
yeah.
So cropping.
Bit of a mix, yeah.
When I asked Tom what tips and tricks he's learned here that he'll take back to England, the prompt reply is all of it. He'll be finding a farm to work on back in Cornwall.
I'll definitely find a farm back home and see what the future holds, I suppose.
Andy Smith's a little more ambitious with his plans on his return to England.
Yeah, 5 months in a job on a farm somewhere I want to do, and then go to Harper Adams University in England, so to do agricultural engineering. So.
Agricultural engineering?
Yeah.
And what sort of agricultural engineering?
Machinery.
And that's our show. Remember, you can catch up with Sector Report and many other programs besides on our website. Catch you soon.